行くよ。
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, I am Briareos Kerensky and this is the review of Blue Reflection, Gust's latest RPG for the PlayStation 4 and Vita.
始めよう。
Blue Reflection tells the story of Hinako, a talented ballerina who suffers a foot injury during a competition before starting her first year in high school. This injury forces her to quit ballet and to start her freshman year just before summer. On her first day, she has to deal not only with the tension of being the odd one out due to her late start, but also being spirited away and fight otherworldly beings. Two voices guide her through this ordeal, soon revealed belonging to Yuzu and Raimu, Inako's classmates. After Inako gets back to the real world, they explain that Inako can perceive strong emotions within distressed girls and pacify them by gathering fragments. Inako can fight enemies found in a girl's psyche thanks to the reflector, which allows her to move freely like her foot injury never happened. Yuzu and Raimu add that enough fragments will call forth pure breeds in the real world, and after the 4 pure breeds are defeated, Inako can wish for anything. With the outlook of getting her foot completely healed, Inako accepts to help Yuzu and Raimu collecting fragments and defeating pure breeds. As the story goes on, Hinako befriends more girls that will help the three with bonuses to battle actions and supports against pure breeds.
おお、なかなかかっこいいね。新しい武器？
Blue Reflection is divided into chapters, and each new chapter up to the 8th will introduce a new girl, resulting in a grand total of 15 girls. Unfortunately, Blue Reflection doesn't really handle all these characters well. New girls just pop up for their chapter, their storyline gets resolved, then they are cast aside as simple side quests. There are exceptions to this formula, but overall it feels that no one in the cast is properly used.
マッスルミュージアムとか？
One girl in particular, Mao, gets more attention than most. She's introduced before her chapter, she has brief interactions with Inako, and then she's turned into an antagonist of sorts. During her chapter she gets a proper backstory, backed up by some nice visuals, but that comes out of nowhere, and she's the only girl receiving such attention. Inako's rival in ballet, Sarasa, doesn't get this much attention, neither does one of Inako's childhood friends. Yuzu and Raimu do get their fair share of attention, mostly during the closing chapters, when they explain to Inako the truth behind them and the reflector. During these chapters, Blue Reflection is able to weave an interesting story supported by a good script, making shortcomings of the previous chapters even more evident. If anything, the very last boss encounter feels out of place both as a story-resolving element and in its design, especially when the rest of the game is spot on when it comes to style. And yet, I've enjoyed the story, more so than the pure gaming parts. It wasn't groundbreaking or genre-twisting, but it was nevertheless enjoyable and was able to pluck the right emotional strings where required. The secondary girls do get their shining moments during their side stories, with Fumi getting a rather interesting and long quest. It's just a shame that their input to their main story is very limited, and getting to the bottom of their side quests can be a tad boring.
ほら、友達のところに名前が出てるでしょ。あ、そろそろ戻らないと。
私は少し片付けをしてから戻る。先に行ってくれ。
そう、わかった。
I don't usually mention DLCs, but Blue Reflection has a ton of those, and in Japan its season pass is worth a little more than 9,000 yen. The DLCs have a fair share of story content, and I'm kinda interested to see what they bring to the table. Blue Reflection's story is perfectly fine without DLC, but if those extra tales successfully explore secondary characters, they might be a worth addition. Or, if you want to play as the Devil's Advocate, you can say that Gust cut those stories from the game due to time or budget constraints and are now selling them as extras. Anyway, DLC might be a worthwhile addition to Blue Reflection. Hinako goes through chapters by accomplishing missions and going home after a day of hard work. Days all begin with a short introductory sequence, and to the game's credit, I've never seen a scene repeated even after spending a couple of chapters ending one day after just a single mission, once again reaffirming that Blue Reflection's strong points are the story and character interaction. Lesson hours are skipped entirely, and during the afternoon Hinako partakes in tasks to gather points and levels to unlock the next step to the main story.
待ってて。
Points are awarded based on how difficult a mission is, and these act as a simple barrier towards the next chapter with no direct influence on the game itself.
戦闘開始。
Character levels aren't gained by simply fighting more enemies, but by completing missions. At each level up, Hinako, Yuzu and Raimu, the only playable characters, will get one skill point to enhance attack, defense, support effectiveness and action speed. Points and levels are cumulative, and if you take your time to complete all missions in the first chapters, you'll have more than enough points and most probably end up over-leveled even against the last boss. I think there is a level capped at 50, but to be honest I left out a few gathering missions during the last two chapters because they require too much farming.
スクープの匂い。
After running around schools helping others, Hinako can head home or stop by somewhere with one of the girls to increase their relationship level. Often the day after, the chosen girl will ask Hinako something, and if the answer is correct, their relationship will improve further. After certain events, Hinako will get a new fragment to enhance battle actions. There are a lot of fragments, and all can be upgraded with materials collected in dungeons and battling enemies. This process is rather sterile. I would have preferred to have fragments improved based on interactions, rather than a simple collectathon for the right materials.
こんな感じかな。こんな感じかな。気をつけて進まないと。
The same simplistic approach is used for dungeon and battle design. Dungeon design is based on the prominent emotion the girl you're helping is affected by, and there are only three main sources. During the closing chapters, emotions mix, but this results in two different tile sets being hastily thrown together rather than more organic and fluid designs. Dungeon layouts change between chapters, but not every chapter, resulting in very boring locations to go through. Enemies don't really change between chapters, they just receive a new coat of paint and maybe a tiny new physical detail. Combat is best described as quote-unquote gust combat. Turn-based, action sequences shown on a timeline, and the ability to delay enemy actions with a knockback attack. If you've played, almost every other Gust RPG, you'll be familiar with it the moment you begin the first battle. However, unlike many other Gust titles, combat in Blue Reflection is very basic and ends up being a boring necessity to go through missions. Opposing parties can be easily dispatched by just spamming the most powerful area attack Hinako, Yuzu and Raimu have, and around halfway through the game Yuzu, normally the first to act, gets an attack strong enough to kill most enemy formations in one go. Health and MPs are replenished after each fight, and if you strike an enemy on the map, another Gust staple, you can start a fight with twice the Ether as usual, allowing one character to enter overdrive. Ether is a shared resource within the party, and allows to stack more actions in a turn by spending 30% of it to trigger overdrive. This is usually reserved for Hinako thanks to her eclectic and powerful offensive repertoire and ability to buff the whole party.
やったね。お疲れ。
Either can be gathered during battles with the respective action, but also recharges character-specific MPs. As the story progresses, the party gets 4 more Either-based abilities: extra defense, out-of-turn healing, increased speed on the battle timeline, or out-of-turn support against pure breeds. Battles against the pure breeds are more varied and complex. The girls befriended during the game can be assigned to either Hinako, Yuzu, and Raimu, and will perform various actions once one of the 3 main girls perform an action. Bonuses include extra attacks, heals, buffs, more either, increased timeline speed, or revives. Against pure breeds, players must manage MP and leader reserves to carry a party through a rather long battle against a sturdy enemy of ever-increasing power as its health goes down.
決める。ガンガン行くよ。いけー。あたいに任せな。はあ。
However, pure breeds fail in being dangerous opponents, just like normal enemies. Thanks to the supporting girls, there is no real need to heal and the party can concentrate on attacking, once again by having 2 girls spamming their most powerful attacks and the other recovering either. Enemies simply don't deal enough damage to bring anyone down to dangerous levels, and before that can happen, the support cast is able to easily top everyone else off. Developers tried their best to make combat interesting, with a large variety of attacks and a rather complex system of enemy weaknesses and strengths, but ultimately failed to deliver due to lack of challenge, missed opportunities to make the combat system interesting, and boring dungeon design.
だいぶ効いてきたんじゃない？
Blue Reflection's graphical style is one of the strong suits of the game. Character design is by Mel Kishida, that already lent his talent to the 3 Atelier games set in Ireland. I absolutely love Kishida's style when it comes to magical girls, and his touch carries to the in-game 3D models, although they lose his peculiar watercolor styling. Blue Reflection knows how to create good-looking scenes, but at times lighting and blur effects are abused and make things look silly. When the 2 effects aren't used to their extremes and characters are framed correctly, Blue Reflection is a beautiful game to look at. The music is more or less on par with many other Atelier games, with only a few standout tracks and a host of forgettable ones. Some of the latter are used in an effective way, which in itself is a win, but it's easier to remember the moment rather than the music accompanying it. One thing I found particularly out of place is fanservice. There is a strange obsession with rainy summer days and girls not carrying umbrellas, resulting in see-through clothes. I'm all for fanservice, but in this particular game, seeing high school girls showing their underwear through wet, stark white uniforms didn't feel in line with the overall tone of the game. Despite its flaws in storytelling and game mechanics, Blue Reflection is an enjoyable game. Allow me to digress a bit, but Blue Reflection is probably why Yoru no Naikuni 2 has been postponed since November 2016, and I'd like Gus to focus on one project at a time, rather than try to juggle multiple games of different genres at any one time. A lot of Gust games border on greatness, but ultimately fail to attain it due to various reasons, and if Gust were able to focus all their efforts on Blue Reflection, it could have easily been one of their best games. Instead, it's just enjoyable. Not bad by any means, but it pains me a lot seeing all this squandered potential. If you like magical girls and classic JRPGs, Blue Reflection won't disappoint. Just be sure to approach it as a story-driven experience, rather than combat-driven. I hope you have enjoyed this review and you'll stick around for more. Briereos Kerensky, over and out.